the best programs are built around certain types of people, um, which really kind of caught my interest in terms of like, well, what could we build? Who would that be for? What would that look like? Which back in 2019 really kind of uh, initiated that process of, okay, let's make something really really cool, and really try to help a certain type of person a certain type of way, and just drive change and create community, and a lot of the things that I have interest in, like teams and sports and culture, and the system of something, a sum of parts moving in a direction together is bigger than any one thing. So I've been fortunate to kind of take these things that I've always had a lot of interest in, and a passion and my personal experience, and kind of charge forward with this project with a lot of other awesome people we work with to try to make a difference and build something that's gonna help a lot of people.
Hello, I am B. Reeves with New Waters Recovery in Raleigh, North Carolina. Welcome to our weekly podcast, Finding New Waters. Our goal in creating Finding New Waters is to provide a resource for families to help navigate the complexities of supporting a loved one struggling with substance use or mental health. When we find ourselves in crisis due to one of these issues, most people have no idea where to turn. We hope to shed some light onto what is often the darkest hour for many families. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. We have an amazing guest today, a guy I've actually gotten to know through playing golf, through work. Timmy Brooks from Pennsylvania, who is the owner and founder of Synergy Houses in Westchester, Pennsylvania, is joining us today on Finding New Waters. Welcome, Timmy.
What's up, E? Thanks for having me.
Oh man, thank you for being here. So I always like to just sort of lay it out there and ask kind of how did you end up working in this field, and just a little bit about your path.
Yeah. So a journey of personal recovery is really the primary catalyst, and I there were a lot of things that I experienced that in my journey of recovery that I'm really grateful for. Access to good care, a family system that really craved to understand what I was going through, and a lot of people in the recovery community that did a lot for me, because what they said was it helped them. And so through my journey of recovery and trying to figure out what I was gonna try to do in this world that would like really kind of fill my soul, um, just really became this exploration process of learning about treatment and different avenues and different pathways. And um, I was fortunate to really kind of get lucky and like have a lot of coffees in that exploration period with people who now I recognize are like pioneers in the space and really have built really profound services in the treatment industry. And they all kind of said the same thing. They were like, the best programs are built around certain types of people, um, which really kind of caught my interest in terms of like, well, what could we build? Who would that be for? What would that look like? Which back in 2019 really kind of uh, initiated that process of, okay, let's make something really really cool, and really try to help a certain type of person a certain type of way, and just drive change and create community, and a lot of the things that I have interest in, like teams and sports and culture, and the system of something, a sum of parts moving in a direction together is bigger than any one thing. So I've been fortunate to kind of take these things that I've always had a lot of interest in, and a passion and my personal experience, and kind of charge forward with this project with a lot of other awesome people we work with to try to make a difference and build something that's gonna help a lot of people.
Yeah. I've recently visited your program up in Westchester, and it's an amazing program. And my job consists of me visiting lots of programs. That's kind of that's the main part of my job, honestly. And I hear a lot of people talk about how great their programs are and the energy and the vibe. And we got this thing. And sometimes I see it, sometimes I don't, but I definitely saw it up in Westchester. And it's an amazing thing. They're in this quaint little village of Westchester outside Philadelphia, and they kind of have buildings strewn about town that are all kind of connected, and everybody can walk everywhere. It's an amazing thing. And one thing I see that y'all are doing up there is not just wagging a finger at young adults and telling them, how to get and stay sober, but showing them, but leading by example.
Yeah, that was really kind of the core of when we started, like, or when I have friends outside of the treatment space and they're like, "Hey, Timmy, how does this all work? Like, what goes on up there?" And maybe I'm just like, I just want to hang out, not talk about work. I might say something like, it's actually pretty simple. Like, we hire people that are great examples of what it is to live a life of recovery that's attractive, and we position them in front of people who have curiosity or interest in exploring that, and we position process and structure and boundaries around them, and we get better. And
Yeah.
obviously, there's a lot more within that, but it's it's interesting with young adults where I feel like everybody really understands and knows like where they want to go, the life that like everybody can whiteboard like the life they want to have. It's just like what it looked like when I was struggling that way. And for a lot of our clients is what a provider would say is the proper course to get there, and what they would say is often like radically different. So how do we create agency for them in a process where most of the times I feel like that's been stripped through parental guidance or just the choices they've made through their struggle, and really have like the purpose of connection and transparency be the means for them to want to make different kinds of choices and change those patterns.
How old were you when you got sober?
I was 18.
It's unbelievable. I've said this on this podcast many times that the longer I'm around, when I first got sober and met people who had gotten sober at 18, 19, 20, 21, that seemed insane to me. But the longer I'm around, the more sense it makes to me. What, just full transparency, I knew a little bit about your story, after I met you about a year ago, actually, in October of last year. And then we've seen each other a couple more times since then. And I read a story about you, about kind of your journey and the specifics of it. And, it blew me away. And I'm asking if you wouldn't mind sharing the abridged version of that for our listeners.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, my journey goes, started using and drinking when I was 15. And by the time I was 18, I was charged with 13 felonies and this magical life that I convinced the world I was living, with sports scholarships into college and, friends and adults that thought I was a man of great character. Like the two lives that I was trying to live were really colliding into one. And the things that I really deeply cared about, like the awesome schools that I went to, the teams I played on, the organizations that valued me as a participant, my parents, my friends, like those things just pretty much like the integrity of those things, like I shattered them overnight. Um, and when the when five detectives rolled into my kitchen and my parents had no idea what was going on, because I was selling a bunch of weed. It kind of prompted me to start to be a little honest about what was going on with my family. And and this is where I relate to a lot of our clients, I think, can pretty consistently. Most of them is I was asked to do a lot of things that I didn't want to do in the recovery process, and I did not do them because I wanted a life of sobriety or because I wanted to be, the person I want to be today, someone that's honest and open and vulnerable and respectable. I made the choices to do the things I was asked because I was terrified of going to jail. And I had news trucks on my street for a week, and Dr. Phil and Oprah were leaving messages on my answering machine wanting to come in and put me on parade as the troubled 18-year-old boy from an affluent town of Philadelphia, and so I was made an example in the media in a way that actually really served um, my need to accept the reality of the choices I made, but it really did not serve the great things in my life that helped me get where I was. So there was a lot of pain in the identity around that. There was a lot of pain in kind of accepting that I wasn't normal. That's another thing we hear a lot. It's like, I just want to be normal, right? And So I spent 11 months on bail. I did most of the things we ask our clients to do today. I got highly engaged in 12-step recovery. I went to treatment. I got a job, like a recovery job, working at a home and garden flower shop. Um, I just kind of cried and enraged my way through a lot of moments where I could have made a lot of bad choices. And there were a lot of people that somebody I was talking to on my way out here this morning, somebody that I met when I had 7 days of sobriety. And I ended up going to a sentencing hearing where a judge could have sent me away anywhere from 4 years to probation, and they sent me away for 9 to 23 months. So I did 7 months in the county jail. My 1 year anniversary was a day that I had a visitation, and my dad, who is in recovery, like put a coin from a 12-step community like under his watch. Like he kind of like snuck it into the visitation room, and he like kind of pops it open, and all these people around me that like I have to kind of like maintain the status quo in their visitation, right? Like I don't want to be the guy like melting in tears on my 1 year in the visitation room of the jail. Um, but it's like that stuff hit me, and that stuff was real, and I felt like proud of that in a way that when I was counting days, I didn't think that was going to be my truth. Um, so yeah, I don't know if there's other stuff in there that you don't want me to talk about, but when I think about like what was it like, that's really what comes up.
That's the ultimate nudge from a judge. And for those who don't know what that is, one way of there are many paths to finding recovery, as I've realized over the years. And one thing I remember hearing really early when I was still in treatment was I saw this speaker who was probably 28 when he was speaking, but he and his dad had this crazy story where they were smoking crack together. His dad was a CFO of a big company in Tennessee. It was just a wild story. And he ended up getting in a bunch of trouble. And he referred to what happened with him as a nudge from a judge, meaning a judge sentenced him to AA meetings, among other things. And kind of like you're saying, he wasn't super psyched to be there, on fire for recovery, but he had to do it to stay on probation or to satisfy his probation. But he kept coming back. Next thing you know, he's starting to feel better, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and kept him on a path of recovery. But one other thing I want to ask you about is the article I read was actually, I think it was in Lacrosse magazine, about how, you started out at a university and then all this happened and then you got out. And I think maybe tell us how the process of getting back into college, getting back into lacrosse and all of that.
Sure. Yeah. So that was kind of my dream in life, was like, I want to be a college lacrosse player. And when I was 5 and 6 and 7, and when I went to Richmond, I was there for 6 weeks after high school before recovery. And there was a process of kind of coping with the reality of like, oh, I just dropped out. Like I'm, a person that struggles with substances, like what's my identity, all that. So when I was in jail, I was on work release for the last 3 months, and I would take public transportation, and I saw an ad for this local school outside of Philly, and I sent a job, or not a job, a school application in, and in August applying for, or I'm sorry, in July applying for August, and I got a call from admissions the next day, and they were like, hey, got your application, everything looks really good, like I just want to make sure that like this is a mistake, right? Like you accidentally checked the box indicating that you're a felon, right? And I was like, no, not an accident. Clicked it the way, honesty's the way, clicked it. And we had a conversation, and they were willing to give me a second chance. So I was actually in jail the entire 2015 NFL offseason. I went to jail the day after Malcolm Butler picked off Russell Wilson, and I got out of jail the Wednesday night before Thursday night football next season. And so I I got out of jail on a Wednesday, and I was like in an accounting class. A couple hours later, I was sending emails to my teachers like, "Hey, I got like, do you mind? I'm gonna miss syllabus week. Like, do you mind if I don't get like docked for the like attendance tracker thing?" And a lot of the teachers were like, "You can kick rocks. Like, we don't care." Um, and so I went back to school, and I reached out to the lacrosse coach and was like, "Hey, I'd love to chat." And um, I think part of one of the things I've come to just accept is um like I I don't I'm like just an all-in kind of person. And so when I created a lot of chaos, I did it in a way that was significant. And the output of that is that today I have this, great reminder when I have the gratitude to see that it's a great reminder that there are things that if I choose or want to do, it's going to be a little bit of a process to get there because of the mistakes I made, because of the reputational damage. And I've experienced that, with banks and credit cards and schools and jobs. And, I think the treatment community is one that I think bears um, kind of acceptance of that more than any other space. And so with school and with playing lacrosse, I did that with the coach, and I joined the team. And like when I put that helmet on, I really just felt like a guy with a helmet on, which was pretty cool as a person in recovery, kind of in that environment for 4 years. And we did some really cool stuff. We won a lot of games. We had a really awesome senior year. We made it to the playoffs. We kept winning, and all of a sudden we were hoisting the national championship trophy at the stadium where the Eagles play. Just like so cool, so special, um, and so much of that. Like I have a my childhood my childhood bedroom has since been like dismantled. But in that childhood bedroom, I used to have like a bunch of trophies. But I don't know if I could ever really look at those trophies and be like, I feel like there was a lot of integrity behind earning those and like my relationships. And sure, maybe I was like good at those sports, but the lacrosse thing in college is something that like I'm really proud of, mostly regarding like how I carried myself through just trying to like make a lot of mistakes and clean them up in a way that I can feel good about like what the past looks like.
Thank you for sharing that. Like I said, I read that article right after you, I think you had come to tour New Waters, and it was a Friday afternoon, and I was sitting in this office at my girlfriend's house, and I read that and then started crying. It was unbelievable, and sent it to a bunch of people, and it was so moving. I want to suggest people do just Google Timmy Brooks Lacrosse Magazine and read it. One thing I remember we talked about recently when I was up visiting you, or maybe before, but you said when you got back to Philly and got back in, into the recovery world in Philly and going to meetings, you were very lucky to find a group of old timers. Most people were 20, 30 years older than you.
Hmm.
Will you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So my some people in my family that are in recovery in my first couple weeks, they just teed me up to go have coffee with other men in recovery that um like have a pretty attractive life. And I I felt comfortable around them, or I felt like less uncomfortable is probably more appropriate to say. And and they said things like call me and come play golf with us and come smoke cigars and what are you doing this weekend? And I tried to jump on like that road to yes as much as possible and show up in those circles and do things like stick with the winners. And I think what came of that is after a couple weeks, there were like 10 to 15 people that deeply understood what I was going through day to day and the challenges associated with that. And I was getting feedback and hearing like sometimes I was being told the truth in ways that didn't feel so comfortable um, about where I was or my mindset or what I needed to do. Um, but it more than anything, I think those relationships have really helped me evolve and come to just embrace like a process of seeking feedback and communicating about what's going on with me. Um, that today I understand is just like the simple reality of what creates sustainable long-term recovery through a lot of the principles of like 12-step models and kind of areas of treatment today.
Yeah, I love saying yes. I mean, I remember vividly one time, first few weeks I was out of treatment in a meeting, and it was announced that Thanksgiving was coming up, and we're going to send a sign up sheet around, and everybody sign up for a potluck dish. There'll be a speaker. we're having a Thanksgiving meal. I remember thinking, what loser would go to a meeting for Thanksgiving? And then 2 weeks later, I'm signing up, bringing a dish. And it's just one of those things. I just was willing to take these suggestions as awkward as they may be. And then hearing, we're going to go take a meeting to a detox, and then we're going to go get pizza after. It's really fun. And I remember thinking, there's no way that's fun. And then I did it, and it is fun. But just being able to say yes, because I see this a lot. I see this a lot with my work life, people who come in. I see this a lot in my personal life with people who come in to 12-step recovery, and in my personal life with friends who are contemplative, pre-contemplative, who need to, but people so often just won't do those things that we're talking about. The other stuff seems very obvious. It's, the meetings, the steps, and but the little things that aren't so little, like participating and saying yes and going to H&I, which for people who don't know is hospitals and institutions, taking meetings into treatment centers and jails, and then going to dinners and going to the Thanksgiving potluck feasts. It's saying yes. That's such a great way to say it. I love that. And then I love that you're this young guy all of a sudden hanging out with these old school, tough love old timers in Philadelphia. I can imagine that was quite a scene.
It was pretty cool. I mean,
Yeah.
it was fun. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
In the moment, would I say it was fun? No. But when I look back, like
Yeah.
I had some good laughs, I met some good people, and a lot of them are still around in my world today.
Yeah. I mean, the day I got home from treatment, I got home about 10:30 in the morning on a Wednesday and went to a meeting at noon, and a friend of mine took me, and it was a meeting where it was a mixed bag, but it was a lot of retired people, a lot of old, not only old timers, but older people who were retirement age, who went to lots of meetings. And I was able to luckily, get phone numbers, answer phone calls, respond, because people cared. It's so hard. It was so hard for me to accept that these people actually wanted to help me because it's awkward, and I had lots of friends. I grew up in Raleigh, where I got and stay sober, and went to a different school. I felt like I had a lot of friends, but then all of a sudden I've got this new batch of people who want to hang out and be my friend. And I just luckily was still, had enough of the gift of desperation when I actually got into the rooms, that I was willing to, get weird, get awkward, be vulnerable, and just go hang out with a bunch of new people. I mean, somebody asked me on a podcast I was on, did I have to get all new friends? My answer was no, but I now have a lot of additional friends and I have a very different relationship with my old friends that I used to party with. And, it's just different. And I prefer, especially when I'm going through something and I'm in my own head, I'm probably not going to reach out to one of my childhood friends or high school or college friends unless that person is also in recovery. I like to
Hmm.
talk to people in recovery about that stuff because they get it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
So what are you seeing right now? You work with young adults, 8, 7, you can actually take 17-year-olds, right? Tell us
Mhm.
what your demographic is out there.
We serve young adult men and women between the ages of 17 and 35. Um, Substance use, co-occurring, um, really in this place in life where our clients are craving autonomy and agency over adulthood, and their attempt to thrive in that um, has been unsuccessful and created some tricky relationship dynamics with family where they're at times financially and emotionally dependent on family an adult, and it's uncomfortable for the family, it's uncomfortable for the client. So our system of care is long term. Program completion looks like 6 to 12 months. Clients come to us after a residential or stabilization, or like wilderness program stay. And we see a lot of, I think over the last couple of years, like we've seen the acuity get higher. We've seen a lot of THC induced psychosis. Um, we've seen, it's interesting, like on the admissions calls for the 17, 18, 19, and really up to even like 24-year-olds. Oftentimes when families or clients tell their kind of history, they always mention COVID and how that had an impact on them. Particularly parents, I think, related to like, well, when COVID happened, this is how things changed. Um, and I'm of the perspective that like what's happening, I should say like before Synergy, I did a good bit of like prevention work in high schools and kind of took a message of um, prevention and brought it to stages. And I would get to talk to guidance counselors in schools and understand what's at play. And um, I think the way that the students in high schools and middle schools are seeking validation and trying to stimulate connections, um, and the variables at play like technology and social media and I think about like vaping, right? Like the barrier to entry for putting a substance in your body is a lot less intimidating. Before
Mm-hmm.
vaping, you had to like, the smoke came out of your mouth, or um, now it doesn't, right? And so getting away with it, all those things, like those variables are different, and what we know about the brain and what it takes to develop and kind of how those things intersect is like I'm pretty scared for people that are in those age demographics right now. And a lot of what we see when they come to Synergy is we're addressing the relationship patterns and the executive functioning and the kind of thinking through how does recovery intersect with the life they want to have, different from in rest treatment where it's more focused on recovery. And we're seeing folks act out in different ways if it's gambling or hypersexuality or codependency or disordered eating. Um, so it's interesting. It's really interesting to kind of see how like to see how it's kind of coming forth. And then there's this whole world of us,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like, what can we do better? Like, how do we
Yeah.
help these people? Like, how do we take new information and data and studies and like understand what works and be adaptive and proactive? Um, I find it
Yeah.
really hard to, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that the THC induced psychosis thing, it's, you know, weed, marijuana, THC, cannabis, whatever we want to call it, it has gotten, it's so different than it was not that long ago. And people, we as a culture and as a society have deemed it to be so harmless being legal places. And I'm not here to, to have any kind of opinion on the legality of it. But what I do know, and which is objectively true, is that it's been normalized to the point where it doesn't seem like it's a big deal. And the
Hmm.
truth is, it not only in the moment making people very, very intoxicated and incapable of functioning properly, but this long term effect in this THC induced psychosis, we see that a good bit too. And I mean, I have a personal friend who I'm not sure will come back from that.
Hmm.
What are you seeing about when people are coming to you? Are they snapping out of it? And if so, how long? And how does that even work?
I think the thing that we like the questions that are at play when clients that have experienced that come to us is, are there any long-term effects? And there are providers out there that want to put diagnoses on clients and identify, kind of put things like bipolar and, you know, draw conclusions when they're kind of near coming out of state of mania, when there's a lot of variables at play, if it's substance use or lack of medications. And so we've had a lot of success with clients who have um, come out of that. I think one of our challenges is that there can be a capacity issue or a capacity like barrier around the expectations and just the capacity of our clients showing up and participating in different avenues of support. Um, we talk about um, like that camaraderie 12-step piece of getting plugged in with other folks in recovery and so anyone that comes to Synergy has to have the capacity to like sit in a clinical group and have one-on-one sessions and those sort of things. But when we start to look at like, okay, what kind of ways do we want to see them develop resource capability in other areas when there are those variables as a part of their past drug-induced psychosis, medical challenges, different co-occurring diagnoses. It really becomes, okay, how do we then find alternatives or steer them to have a shift in their capacity to appropriately engage in these things that we believe in, that we see and want for our clients to have sustainable long-term change.
Yeah, I hear you. It's tricky, but again, just back to it, everybody. I mean, do you see how often is somebody in there and they just still don't, they maybe they were doing poly substance person and they end up coming to you and then they just still are like, think weed is harmless.
Um, they think weed is harmless, not a ton. It's almost
Yeah.
like they know the stove is hot, they're just down to touch it. And
Right.
they're
Good
and
point. Well put.
they see it as like, and we don't ask our clients to commit to a life of sobriety. We just say, for right now, can we agree to do some work and see where that takes us?
Yeah.
And so in that body of work, some clients are very protective on kind of an ulterior agenda of, when I get somewhere, I'm going to do this. Other clients are willing to talk about that and kind of stand in their truth. And I think that creates a lot of really healthy dialogue. Um, and our job is, through the milieu management, is to understand where behaviors are at play that's going to pose risk to that community. If someone's looking to do that here, that's obviously unacceptable for the community standards. Um, but I kind of call it like sober curiosity, and asking the proactive questions and understanding how they think about it, what their willingness is to shift. And I just truly believe that if we provide someone an experience where they get connected to other people and other things, hobbies, interests, experiences that they take a deep interest in pursuing, that experience can overtake a idea or commitment to participate in something that's pretty suggestive to be an unhealthy pattern. Um,
Yeah.
and our job is to provide them the services to hopefully have that shift. So we get folks who have the shift, who come in being like, oh yeah, man, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to smoke weed later. And we're like, okay, cool. Like, let's do some work. And,
Yeah.
and then we have other people that come in and you're like, wow, man, you've really surrendered. Like, let's do some work.
Yeah. I had a conversation with a guy yesterday in Virginia Beach, old friend of mine, and we had a mutual friend who had come back to that area, who fresh out of treatment, on fire for it, and smoking weed. And, the thing is, I've seen this happen before, where people, that's the one thing they won't put down, but then after some trial and error, they do. And then they recommit and realize that it cuts out, that it's blocking a connection with a higher power, and that it's just not really sober. And so they will recommit. But the way I look at it, especially if somebody is kind of in a situation like we just discussed, is that hopefully they will get there, because in my experience, what I've seen, it usually does lead back to the more quote unquote harmful substance of choice, and creates another bottom, which helps the person understand that maybe let's try full on abstinence and that kind of recovery.
Yeah.
Hey, hang on a second. What? Oh, I was going to ask, what's the time, Solomon? 30. Okay. Let me restart. Go ahead, Timmy.
We have we have clients who come in and God, I totally lost my train of thought. Sorry, brother.
That's all right. Just start anytime. I messed it up because the
No, you're
timer
good.
is, I can't tell what time we've done.
You're good. What were we were talking about THC
Talking
induced
about
psychosis.
THC and people kind of trying it without it, and then coming back and hitting another bottom, and then
It's like right on the tip of my brain. I'm trying to think of what
that's
it is. Sorry, bro.
damn, no worries.
It was like,
Re-ask the question.
Hold on one second. What's that?
Re-ask the question.
I don't even remember what it was.
What's the question?
I think what it was like, I was gonna say, we have clients that come in and I don't know, man. Sorry, I lost
That's
it.
all right. All good. So what, all right. So in terms of, you said you did, or when I was up there, I remember said that the men's programming was a little bit more traditional addicts, alcoholics, and then the women's program was a little bit more mental health heavy. Is that accurate?
Um, yeah, our experience is like everyone that comes to Synergy has to have some form of substance use as a part of their past. The funk, the the care model at the men's program is, I would say, substance use is the main common bond that is the dialogue within the community that people relate and connect to each other around that. In the women's program, the common bond is really equal parts the relationship with substances and history of trauma. And so the treatment model for both our men and women is what we would call trauma informed relational repair. We're really big on having the right people in the right seats and the right contents of work with the right people. And so clinically, all of our clinicians are trained in different trauma modalities. Our clients are getting exposed to different modalities. We're not a program that has like our guys sitting in a chair for 3 hours doing a process 12-step relapse prevention group. We're using movement and creativity, and we're really exploring with our clients how they show up relationally and why they are the way they are. And then in some of our housing programming and our housing structure, we're seeing how those behaviors come up, and we're intervening in real time through the communication patterns that exist in the program. And we're looking to guide and support our clients to access the resources that we want them to use long term, which could be for some client when they get emotionally dysregulated, they need to go for a walk. We see that a lot in our women's program. For someone else, it's like they have a dynamite relationship with their sponsor. They know how to use their sponsor. They just need to call. And for others, it's exercise or so the way I see it, like it's our job to understand our clients really, really well, understand how they show up, the right way to hold them accountable, the right way to communicate to them, who the key stakeholders are on our team that are going to have the best chance at driving change. Sometimes that's me as the founder. There are people that I was texting last night in our community because it's what works for them. And then there's other clients where it's our chef or our wellness coordinator, one of our case managers. So we really kind of take all these things that we have and we want to say, how can we blend them around each person in a way that makes sense? So within their experience, they feel transparency, equality, consistency, and we can create an environment for them where there's bumpers to really make mistakes and have the output and the processing of what mistakes they make be really those learning opportunities to advance in the areas they say they want to go.
Awesome. I just wanted to go back to something you mentioned earlier. I spoke to you about this before, but when you were before, or maybe even when you were starting Synergy and you were doing youth prevention work, will you talk a little bit about that? Just a lot of people who listen to this have their 50s, 60s, have kids who are teenagers, college, ish, and just kind of what you saw, what kind of results came out of it, and just what parents need to be on the lookout for.
Yeah. It's so much fun. I gotta say, like prevention work, and I miss it so much. So essentially it's getting on a stage in front of auditoriums of students and parents and talking about the truth, which is what I lived through and learning lessons and what resources are out there and creating conversation around topics related to mental health and care that often go unlooked or unrecognized. My message was not a don't do drugs message. Um, it was a, hey, there's a lot of resources out there, and let's talk about probably the ones that you guys have in your life today that could be better utilized and the ones that are out there that you might not have that you deserve access to if you want and need them. And it's so interesting. Like every school I would go to, the guidance counselor would be like, you got to talk to this kid. And they would always put like the kid in front of me that was like kind of like me when I was in high school, but maybe like a little more in the doghouse. And and you give them your number and you say, hey, call me, like, what can I do to help? And that kid doesn't want to talk to me, right? It's
Right.
and then there's all these people who come up and ask questions after the messaging, or they want to learn more, and we help them get access to care in ways that make sense. So I've done a lot of different things. I've been in a high school for 2 days and do 20 presentations to 20 health classes. I've done auditoriums, I've done stadiums, like I've done different styles of presenting. Um, and it's pretty cool. It feels way more up the stream. It's like it's supporting people to prevent to have the right things in place so they're not on the admissions line at places like New Waters and Synergy. Um,
Right.
and it's pretty cool. COVID really was the thing. I had a bunch of stuff scheduled, and then COVID hit, and it kind of threw it off track. And at the same time, a lot of cool stuff was happening at Synergy, and just the nature of my work kind of has shifted. I still get to do a little bit here and there.
I've never done anything in an official capacity with any kind of youth prevention, but every now and then I get a friend or a friend of friend to talk to their children, or
Hmm.
and I don't really quite know what to do, but I definitely don't wag a finger and say, don't do this, don't do that. I just try to tell them what I did and kind of where it ultimately took me. And it's funny because it's, it ultimately took me to exactly where I wanted to be without ever knowing that back then. But it doesn't have to be this way. It's a tricky thing because I don't ever want to convey that I'm not happy with how I ended up and the way I got here, but it's also unnecessary. A lot of it, most of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the fun part is trying to steer someone to have a different thought about it, but making sure that they know it's their thought, because nobody likes
Right.
being told what to do. Nobody likes hearing the word no, at least the way we struggle, like we don't. And so
Right.
how do you create a conversation that can challenge what I can perceive to be rigid thinking around um, areas of their life that to them feel good, if that's the way they show up in relationships or substance use or codependency. We had a lot of people that are like, my friend needs help. How do I help him?
Hmm.
I find myself carrying him home and lying to his mom for him and all that stuff. And so it's pretty cool to like watch young people invite some of these things into their life. And I think that's one of the variables that's like playing well for our world right now, is it's become kind of like cool and hip to be into mental health, like some of the pop culture movements um and some of that stuff. So I appreciate our world like opening that up to our society in a way where it's just more inclusive and okay to have these discussions.
Absolutely. Well, I think we can end it right there. I'm
Perfect.
always very abrupt, but
That's cool.
hey, look, before we go, Timmy, tell us, we're gonna put this all where people can find it and click right on it, but tell us where they can find you and how.
They can call me, email me, go to our website, synergyhouses.com. Um, and my email's timmy@synergyhouses.com. And I think we can probably put my phone number somewhere. So thanks, B. I appreciate being on, man. A lot of fun.
Timmy Brooks, thank you so much, man. Have a great day.
You too.